Wow, that's exciting.
It is. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Productivity Mastery. We are live here on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, but you might be listening to the podcast in one of the streaming platforms, podcast platforms. So, welcome to Productivity Mastery, the podcast that's bringing you very, very inspiring leaders from all across the world. And we cover bunch of topics usually around the realms of entrepreneurship, leadership, performance, personal development, and today how to perform in uncertain times. And I'm super, super excited to introduce you to our guest today. We did not know each other a little more than a month ago, but I had a trip to Tel Aviv to do a keynote for a client, and as always, I reached out to a bunch of people who introduced me to other people. I don't even know how I happened to meet this lady that you're going to hear from in just a minute, but it was such a fantastic tour she gave me across the um, a very small part, I guess, of the super rich ecosystem in Tel Aviv. We visited a couple of buildings, co-working spaces, the Amazon office. She brought me to this nice, was it
A couple of hours,
Sedona
indeed.
market? I don't know, like a coffee shop, and I had some
Yeah.
nice baked goodies. And we started talking about entrepreneurship, about her journey. And let me just tell you, this lady here, she's the founder of Blockchain Academy, the founder of Blockchain Israel. She's the co-founder and board advisor at Coders Community. She is the founder and CEO of Yops. I hope I former founder and CEO of Yops, if I can pronounce it correctly. She's been a mentor and startup advisor at Google Campus Tel Aviv. She is currently the chairperson of the IEEE Global Artificial
IEEE, yeah.
Intelligence Systems Well-Being Initiative. She's the founder of the Road of Sustainability. I've just recorded a podcast with her on connected to the project, and she is also the founder and CEO of Nevelab Technologies. She is a keynote speaker. She is an ecosystem builder, and I'm really grateful to welcome on board Yael. How are you this beautiful morning? How's the weather in Tel Aviv?
Thank you. I appreciate. First of all, thank you for the kind words. It's hot outside. Summertime in Israel.
Beautiful. So yeah, why don't you give us a bit of a glimpse of your story? All these kind of experiences. How did you decide I'm going to join the tech ecosystem? Was that a decision like out of college, or what happened? How did you end up where you are today?
Wow. Thank you for asking. It's a question that's pretty difficult for me because I always wanted, to be an entrepreneur. So from a very young age, I'm very into sports. I've been an athlete for many years during my youth, and I immediately knew that I had two choices: be a surgeon or being an entrepreneur. So I decided to switch from my medical studies to go to more technical. I've learned to code by myself from age of 16, something like that, and started launching my first company was at the age of 20. So yeah, that's why I have such a curricula. So yeah, the journey was like pretty challenging, but so far, but a good one. I'm
Did you?
thankful for
I
this.
didn't ask you, but did you also had to do military service yourself?
I did my military service as a volunteer here in Israel because I was like in France for most of my young age, and then switched to Israel.
hmm I
I've been
just
living actually in three countries, three continents actually. I was in Europe, France, England, the US, and ended up back in Israel for the
I,
past 7 years already.
when I was leaving Tel Aviv like a month ago at the airport, I came across this book, Startup Nation, and I'm not sure people in Europe know so much about the ecosystem, and actually how big it is comparatively to the population, for example, of
Mm,
Israel, and how many good things are happening. I don't even know how many unicorns you guys are having, but I know it's somewhere 50, 100, something like that, and it's
it is very intense. Yeah,
less than 7 billion people, I think. And
it's almost 8. Yeah,
one of the main messages of the book, by the way, it's a great book, even though it's a little bit old for some of you might say. I think it's 2008 or 9, so a lot happened afterwards. But even then, there's so many examples and stories of what can we learn from the culture, from the mindset
yeah,
of the region, especially the Israeli who built these fantastic companies. And one of the key words for me was resilience.
it is.
uh, and
It is
and and
resilience.
just having no excuses. And I met somebody, by the way, like I met many people in Tel Aviv. One of them, he was a program manager of a startup acceleration program, and I just opened his LinkedIn, and he has a 2-year training as a sniper. and
Mm.
and I was so curious. I'm like, man, it's what did you learn that you can apply in the startup world? And he was like, you know what, I didn't have any crazy situations, fortunately, but uh, what I think about the military, even in Israel, the mindset is they don't tell you how to do things; they'll tell you what to do. So they'll say you gotta find a great location for, um, you know, from where you can watch. They don't tell you which location. So you gotta think. You gotta be proactive. They tell you you gotta find camouflage that is really good for this environment. They don't tell you which camouflage to wear, right? So there's this whole
Yeah,
kind of a ownership that they give to whatever you are in organization, in military, in the business, I assume. And he said I had to wait 18 hours sometimes. You're waiting, you're sitting on location, so you learn patience, you learn discipline, you learn ownership. So these are the kind of things I want to talk to you about as well, maybe just starting from the
sure.
cultural heritage. And
Yeah,
you did grow up in, was it in Tel Aviv or in?
I grew up between Tel Aviv and Paris. Yeah, so
Mhm.
I have both cultures.
So
I
tell
have
me
a
about it.
very clean and very tasty French culture. So I know wine.
Well,
I know food pretty much. Yeah,
tell me
but I
about, and this
also
is
have
super
the very
interesting.
spicy Israeli side. Yeah.
Super interesting. What did you learn um, from the French culture? What did you learn from Israeli culture when it comes to which you can apply now in building startups and growing
Yeah.
companies?
Well, if I have something to take out from my 20 almost 5 years career in iTech, resilience, and you mentioned it, but I think that without the challenges that I personally encountered during my lifetime, or um, environmental issues, political issues, traveling, whatever, I don't can't recall, is about entrepreneurship can happen, and success can happen only if you have uh, a lot of issues, um, and it doesn't appear overnight, if I can say, yeah. But and I think that these very basic human things that are curiosity, resilience, empathy, whatever, all the very whatever we call soft skill. I'm not into very defining things like a soft hard, but motivation, leadership, and all these things. It's about experience. So and you don't learn these things, at school. You learn them being part of a community. You learn them by design, by doing things, by getting started about something that you believe in. But you never learn that, having a teacher telling you, I'm going to show you how empathy works, or how curiosity or creativity works. It's not it's not the way to do things. I believe in learning. I really support specific knowledge, and this is part of my journey right now. But these things are something that you'll learn because technically you need to acquire and own the tools. But things that are naturally part of the human process have to be part of the creation of an enterprise, if we can call it, or a small business, whatever. Yeah, that's the first thing that I can tell. And yeah, about building a startup, I think that I had something like 5 startups. Some failed, some succeeded. I have 2 examples that can highlight my journey. One of these is the failure that is part of the journey of every entrepreneur I know. I think 99% of my colleagues can tell that you can fail very hard at some point. And I had a startup that I sold 6 months after launching it. So it's like that's also part of the journey. And I'm currently building something that is not a startup. It's more an organization, a group of things, because I believe in tools. But we'll speak about that.
And maybe let's go there. And thank you for being
Yeah.
honest and sharing that you failed a couple of times with your startups. And when we talk about uncertainty, the topic of today, part of the fear of uncertainty comes out of the hidden fear of failure. Um, like it's not the uncertainty you are afraid of; it's the things that uncertainty is going to bring you, which might
Yeah.
not be positive.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to the times that you were struggling to make your one of these startups to work, but it wasn't
Yeah.
happening. And because now it's easy to talk about it, right? But
Yeah. Of
when you were
course.
back there and you really believed in this product, this idea, maybe you have other people on board. Can you tell us about the situation? Like, did you get investors? Do you have a team? And what were the feelings? Like, did you have to struggle with guilt, with how could I make it? Like, how was it? Or did you have a different perspective?
Yeah, thank you for asking. It is indeed very more easy to speak about that. I mean, as an athlete, I can tell that failure, pain, struggles, challenges are part of the journey. So I very early in my life learned that that's part of the journey. Nothing is easy. Success is not, as we mentioned earlier, is not coming up overnight. But yeah, one of the startups that I had was about, and if someone wants to do this, because nobody launched it so far, it was back in time when the financial crisis happened, in 2008, and we launched an app about ordering food from the farm. And if you don't have the recipes, so we drive you to the closest shop, or you can get deliveries on time to make the recipe. And what happened that after 6 months of launching, we already had something like 100,000 downloads. And we got funded first round. It was kind of fantastic, and we somehow ran out of cash, something like a year after the first round. Not because we spent a lot of money, but because of the fees of the company itself. And despite that, partners were rolling out. We had a lot of traction, and it was kind of great. So the second round, it's funny because I told this story yesterday to a friend. It was like, why the hell is not working? Now we need it. But the thing is that we would get money in, and quite a pretty much ARR. But the thing is that I figured that we have some leaks and a lot of people were just doing their own stuff, ordering food or getting into the shop without having the process and the journey. So it was pretty much a problem of alignment with the market, not something that's strange, to any type of other startup. And yeah, I mean, one of the investors called me. I was in the UK back at the time, and called me and told me, okay, we are not gonna fund you again because Samsung is about to launch a fridge that is gonna do what you do. And I was like, okay, it's gonna be launched maybe in 10 to 15 years. Until then, we have time, to make money and to create, something good. It was like, no, I don't wanna fund you. I think you're great, but maybe others will do. I'm afraid of Samsung. So I doubt a lot. And I ended up selling my car to pay my employees. And I truly believed, in the fact that we've been running, for about 6 months, something like that. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna make it happen. And I was like, sure. And the financial crisis occurred. And I was like, okay, what to do, how to figure this out. And I decided to stop the process and to close the startup. And
But
finally,
was that a process? Was that a, I don't know,
a
6 months
decision.
in which you were trying to figure out, should I do it? Should I push the button? Or
I knew that this vision was early on the market. I knew that we needed to align ourselves more and to be patient. But at some point, I mean, you learn over time when to stop things. And me and my partner, we were just, very realistic about what's happening in the situation. After 3 years, selling things, to pay employees is not something that's common or comfy.
we spoke about
It is common
sustainability.
actually, but it's not comfy.
We thought about sustainability in this
Yeah,
podcast
that's
now,
that's
right?
part
Maybe
of
not
the
so.
of the that's one of the main reasons why I'm building right now what I do. But there are two things that human needs to survive. Is about food, and it was before Uber and Airbnb and all these things as a service. But we had this vision. And the second thing is about the survival things that you can get and produce. So we decided to stop the company, and switch to other things. And the startup, after I sold it 6 months after, to a big cosmetic company. But that's because I had already the process, so I sold it. But that's not the thing. The thing is that Samsung finally ended up producing this fridge 10 or 15 years after, and I just, something like a year ago, I saw that this fridge is
And
out.
let me just zoom in for a second as well,
Yeah,
because I think it's
please.
super interesting. Is the moment you were clear, we gotta shut it down.
Yeah.
Um, like the ship is sinking. This is like the captain needs to accept the ship is sinking. What was the process like? Maybe what did you do? You don't have to say I did it right or did it wrong, but
No,
now that you know,
it's not related to right or wrong. It's about having the I think it's about being realistic in times of crisis, or deciding that you cannot, the company is blooding out. You're spending money on things, although you have downloads, and it's we started a partnership program, and we had a lot of partners. And the funny thing is that the marketing from Samsung was part of the partners. So it's like funny things. But we had great partnerships, and for some reason, it's not overnight that I decided to shut down. It's more about having the vision, and the clear overview and the distance from the situation, that you cannot go any longer. uh, because it's becoming complicated. And actually, I started, to see competition also growing, and the food industry, deliveries industry, whatever is about recipes, is getting stronger without you. So you feel that there is distance. You feel that you have to go on further towards, challenges, and have to deal with whatever is happening around, but also, being strong enough to continue. But it takes a lot of strength to decide when to stop. And it's about courage. It's about processing. It's about also respecting the team that you have. And you cannot sell a dream that is not achievable. You cannot continue telling, it's not about lying. It's about, being optimistic, of course, when you come up with an idea, when you launch a process, when you reach goals, and, you do better than the last milestone. And you see that actually, you have users, and so you interact with them. But honestly, deciding when to stop is not about leaving everything behind, and closing the door. It's a process. It's a personal journey, but it also, have to decide with your business partners. I think that, that I took the decision something like, maybe 10 to 15 days after the investor told me, okay, I'm not gonna invest anymore in you. Not because I don't believe in you, but because I'm afraid that coming from an investor, it's really rare. I'm afraid you won't survive in the sea of sharks, and I don't want to lose my money. So that was pretty much uh, brutal, but that was also very clear and realistic from him to tell me things as it is. And honesty is one of the primary things that I truly believe in when it comes to create a startup. So yeah, I respected, back in time, I took that, that decision from him, as and we're still friends. We're still talking. Now he is like truly regretting, he told me yesterday, that he regrets not having, another venture together. So I told him, you're going to have another opportunity soon. But it's um, it's I think it takes courage, to decide to close, and to
And by the
shut
way,
down.
let me just recap a couple of lessons here. You don't have to. I mean, there's been a bunch of crises in the last couple of years. We are right now tapping into a global recession, according to many people.
Yeah.
Strong business leaders, they would say that it's going to be a really severe one. We don't know, but it could be. What Yao is saying, it doesn't mean you need to shut down the company. It might need you need to shut down this product or this idea, or so there will be some situations which you need to make the tough decisions, or you have to lay off some people, right? Like, so there might be some difficult situations, especially if your industry is being hit by whatever crisis, whatever uncertain times are coming. I mean, 2 years ago, it was the pandemic, right? Completely, we have to reimagine the way we do things. Some industries were thriving, like thriving. Some industries were really, really in a difficult times. And we talk about that just an hour ago. Yael
Right.
was hosting me on her own podcast, The Road to Sustainability, and coming back to this. What John F. Kennedy said back in the 60s, and it's I'm not sure how true it is. I need to discover and explore it in more depth, but everybody knows about that. The Chinese word for crisis
Mm.
is compiled of two words. The first one is danger, and the second one is opportunity.
Right.
And if we assume that this is correct, even if it's not, but I think it's a great metaphor.
Mm.
In any uncertainty, in any crisis, there's dangers, but also there's a lot of opportunities. And maybe, yeah, you can also talk about that. Now that you have so much experience, in the
Thank you.
ecosystem, 5 startups, talking to some super experienced people, investors, you know a lot more than you knew back 15, 20 years ago. How can we get ready for a crisis? How can a leader get ready for uncertain times, to face the uncertain times with the preparedness?
Thank you for this question. It's wow. I think it has to come up with something that you believe in, first of all, no matter what's happening around. First of all, before everything, it's not because we are struggling, we are in an environment that is like uncertain, or something happening outside of where you are, that you don't have to. I believe that. I believe in very fundamental things on a journey of any entrepreneur or any leader, whatever. It has to come from your core and what you want to do in your life, and how you want to spend the next decade, or how you want to be as an ancestor. And this is something that you learn over time. I know that I started my journey from a very young age. I started my first company as a forum. I was like 21, something like that. Started, as a forum for parties to sell tickets online. And the project, I sold the project a couple of years after launching it. In the meantime, that I was like studying at the university. 23, sorry, 21. I was like studying medical studies. It's a process, as everything, but I knew really early on, as I mentioned, that I wanted to be an entrepreneur in the digital world. I like everybody, something like at my age, we didn't really know how the internet was so big. I mean, it became a big part of our life. But the first thing is that I don't think that you have to wait for a crisis to create something. You create something out of a need to solve personally, or to solve something that you see as a pain for others, or to disrupt an industry, or to create innovation in a market that you find that is too traditional or too old, or you want to renew something. So that's the first thing, or to simply, add a layer of innovation to an industry. So this is one of the things. The second thing that is important to me is the character. What are the traits? How do you behave? And that's where uncertainty and crisis and challenges and issues are occurring. How do you, as for any other journey in human life, how do you behave? What do you need? What are the types of tools that you need to own to face uncertainty? Because not everything is, on a regular basis, something like very steady. So when you decide to launch a company or business or something that is a project, you have to decide if it's going to be, short time, long time, and again, depending of the purpose. And we mentioned that during our previous podcast. What's the purpose? What's the journey? How do you define it? How do you define the mission that's related to the purpose? And if I take, something that can be just to compare and to provide some perspective, when a big company, I don't want to give name, but when a big company or a large corporation decides to get into innovation, they design the field, they design the demand, they represent the demand and what the value they can bring up, to this demand. And when an entrepreneur, a solo entrepreneur, decides to, or she decides to create something, it's the same. You have a perspective of something, you have a vision, and you have to bring up, the value if you want to make it work. So these are the things, no matter if you're a big team or if you're solo entrepreneur, you have to start from something. It's about observation, it's about curiosity, it's about empathy, it's about compassion, it's about whatever you want to bring up, to the table as a value. And I'm not sure if I answered your question, but these are the very basic things that I'm personally right now trying to reappropriate, re-implement into companies.
And maybe if we can look into the leader journey.
Yeah.
And just to give you again a context, many of the listeners are either entrepreneurs, founders, they work for a startup, or they're ambitious business professionals, executives, managers. And I guess everybody's somehow, looking ahead and being afraid and, what is going on, how things are happening. So from the leader's perspective, leader's journey, how can we mentally prepare to go through uncertain times?
Good question. Thank you for asking. I think that you don't think about uncertainty, and you don't put. I'm gonna redo my sentence. It's not about fear. I think the very basic traits of an entrepreneur is not being feared by any type of situation. Because if you put fear, if you add fear or the feeling of fear into something that you are about to do, you won't do it. So to step up first is about removing the feeling of fear, removing the feeling of uncertainty, because really often, uncertainty brings you fear. Oh, to love fear, like me. I love being challenged. I love fear. I love unknown spaces and venues and fields that I don't know. And that's the, I think that I think that, fear comes up with a bunch of other, a bunch of assets and a bunch of other junction to other feelings. It can bring anxiety, it can bring depression, as we saw during the pandemic. Many people came up with the fear of tomorrow, so they became anxious, they became depressed. A lot of mental struggles, are happening right now. I think that people that want to launch something, leaders, entrepreneurs, founders, startups, have to turn into tools fear and uncertainty and crises, so they can use them as product or services to perform. And it's all about, if you take an athlete, or if you take any type of people that create something, into their field. I think about, chefs. I think about, people doing big challenges over the world. They use crisis, they use fear, they use challenges, they use issues to boost themselves. And this is actually part of my journey, personal journey. That's how I describe things. We'll speak about that, but I've really used the time of the pandemic to understand whatever is happening around and what do we need, in the world to make it better. And that's how I started my journey, about sustainability.
So what you're saying, and I think it's beautiful the way you put it, is we have to reassess our relationship with uncertainty and fear. And I
Indeed.
wanna maybe give you a quote, and I'm not sure how far you made it to the book, our book Perform: The Unsexy Truth About Startup Success. But one of the leaders we interviewed for the book is a gentleman called Hovane Savoyan. He was also on the podcast. He's the founder, CEO of one of the most downloaded apps ever. It's called PixArt. It's like a video pix collage app, more than billion downloads. Um, since last year, it's a unicorn status company. And he's also had 4 successful exits before PixArt.
Well,
And we talk about stress and how is he managing stress. And here's what he said. I'm going to quote him. I try to recognize that stress is a given and just accept it as quietly and calmly as I can. Failure is part of the game, just
yeah.
as much as success. And if you are not ready to fail sometimes, a startup probably isn't the place for you.
Hmm. It is. It is. I absolutely agree. It's like, you speak about assessment. I speak about taking risks, and value the risks at the level of I can accomplish, I can go on, I can get over this risk and reduce the risk, so I can create more. Um, it's a give and take play. That's I mean, it's a game that you have to envision when you come up with an idea about a startup. And I think that many of the successful entrepreneurs will tell you the same. At the very beginning, it's much more challenging, but when you want to get, the first million is very complicated to get, to convince people about your good willing, and to start performing, to start producing something on a regular scale, or these are all the things that are very complicated at the beginning, when you get started. That's what I love personally, to get started, to bootstrap things, to test, because things are changing around, people are changing, we are all evolving. It's not something that's very um, you often step up, but you can get step backs, very often. So it's about leveraging, it's about balancing, the different types of situation. At the beginning, you have to test and learn, always, all the life is just about a big test. And once you have, this first step, you have to reinforce, the basics and the pillars. And then after, you can go up. But again, those trying to reach, a few steps ahead, failure is not very far away. This is what I've learned, over time. Patience and humility are part of and recognition of the situation are part of the journey. And also accountability, taking, the risk requires, responsibility, and accept the situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and from observing the last few years, you mentioned some of the core things that a leader should be doing in no matter if the crisis is like a global kind of recession or it's like a crisis within the company. It could be a PR crisis, it could be a cash flow crisis, get many different
Yeah.
things. But one of the features of a strong leader is the ability to remain calm within the midst of a crisis, not ignoring the crisis, because there's this kind of a, I don't know if you've seen the Lego Batman movie where it's like everything is awesome, like this kind of like there was this song, right, that this over positive person that doesn't see the obstacles. No, there's obstacles, there's risks, it's going to be hard, but it's a leader, you don't have the luxury to show up and be afraid and show up as a victim, and like that's not your job. But you gotta be honest. You gotta tell people things as they are, and with it, and you talk about that as well. You gotta paint a vision for a better future, because And this was one of the most impactful things I heard during my high school years. There was a friend of mine from my class, and I was struggling with something, and I was really down. And he came to me. He was in high school, and he was like, "Stoyan, you know that after it rains, the sun is always going to come up again."
Of course.
And I don't know. It was for in high school for me was like, poof, it's so simple, but I think that's what we have to remember when whatever crisis is coming, the sun is going to come back again. But and coming back to remember the quote that I just shared with you on the other podcast, and now we're going to repeat ourselves here, but it's from Jason Calacanis, an investor, VC, podcaster, and as this quote, I think I heard it like a couple of years ago when the pandemic started. Fortunes are built in the down market and collected in the up market.
It's right. I think that, the best lessons are learned, during uncertainty, during crises. And the more you grow, and this is something that I've learned also, the more it is difficult. Because when you're a kid or a teen or, young entrepreneur, you don't feel the same. And you don't behave the same as you do 20 years later. Small challenges can become a mainstream in the journey. Things that are processing, all along the time, as a CEO, leader, founder, startuper. It's all part of the journey. So you accept them when you're older. When you're young, you somehow dramatize, make big things, big struggles from very small things. And you understand, all along that it has to become part of the journey. But then after, you don't see, big things in the same way as something that's 40, 50, 60 years old. It's different. The perspective is different. And it's all about perspective. And what I'm trying to say here is that everything falls in time in life. And, we see crises, you have, of course, different levels of struggles and different types of risks and everything cannot be into the same basket. But I'm trying to say, just to provide some perspective, that as we have more missions to accomplish all along the time, it's not the same innovation perspective, it's not the same scale, it's not the same market, it's not the same as we had, maybe 5 to 10 years, 20 years ago. We're not trying to answer to, to the same demands. But what I do believe is that, I don't know, I wasn't here, 50 years ago. But what I know is that we have to provide more. And we have to produce more in a better way. And we have to also understand that the environment, the biosphere, at the earth level, has to be integrated in whatever we decide today. We can't create the same way as we meant 50 years ago. And we have to, if we want to understand the environment, if we want to understand, how to address issues from the biosphere, if we want to understand in depth to create better and more, we have to understand first ourselves as human beings. It's about food, it's about water, it's about waste, it's about spending, it's about what are our priorities and how you want to survive and how you want to get older and how you want to share things. It's about, it's a complex mix of collaboration, behavior. It's all about those perspectives that I'm trying today to set as a pillar. for the different types of companies that we're working with. Stoyan, I lost you. So, hey audience, if you hear me, if you have any questions, I have a private chat and I have comments. I lost Stoyan.
Very interesting. You started speaking about it's about food, it's about water. Never happened before. My electricity shut down.
So I continued to speak. Anyway, I asked question if there
No,
is
but it's super
anybody that
interesting.
wants to comment something.
No, but like this is super interesting. It never happened before. My electricity shut down, like in the whole house, so I had to switch to my mobile internet. Now
Oh,
my laptop only have a
shame.
certain
Sorry
amount
for
of
this.
battery, but it's like wow, what a great way to like talking about resources, and talking about how we have to be more mindful about
Conscious. Yeah.
how we manage the resources, and boom, the electricity shut down. Like it's crazy. I have to figure out where is that coming from anyway. But getting
Sorry
back
for
to the
this.
podcast, since we have like 15 more minutes, I wanted to ask you in terms of leading a team, how do we motivate a team during
Oh
uncertain
yeah.
times? And I just want to add to the equation, like there was a bunch of those leaders like Mark Zuckerberg coming up a few weeks ago and saying we gotta perform much more effectively, get much more results. Everybody needs to be really spot on, raising the targets, raising the goals. That was his way of saying it's gonna be a tough one, and we need to come together. Like, but is that the right way to do it? I'm curious to hear what is your suggestion, recommendation on motivating the team to perform during times of uncertainty.
I'm gonna ask another question. How do you motivate a club, a sport team, when it comes to football or whatever team it is? You have to motivate your team members, and everyone and their own character profile, and everyone with their own struggles. There was one with the muscle struggle, or the other one is like me, injured. You have all types of struggles, and you have to embrace these struggles, and you have to overcome all the different little issues that you have on your way. But you have a goal and you have a purpose. First, you have a purpose. Two, you have a goal and you have a mission. And it's about strategy. It's about managing what comes first. The most important problem is about collaboration, and to accept that some fails, you have flaws, you have people with a big ego, and you have other that don't speak, and you have others that you have to understand their silence, and it's all about guesses and all about understanding each other. But what I think is, and you mentioned that a bit before, is about having the same mission and being into a mindset of success, and it's becoming one. And one of the things that I learned over time is not being in control of others, is about the collaboration, is about the exchanging and the trust and the fearness and the fearless, and about having, again, one target. And this is something that I think that most unicorns here succeed on, is about having a team of people that you can trust over time. And a team is about friendship, is about accepting the others, is about accepting your own flaws, is about accepting your strength, is about a lot of, it's a combination of everything. And you also, as a leader, because I know many leaders and colleagues have a big ego. And if you want to be a good leader, you have to remove this part, this big part that is a burden for, for most of the people. You have to manage. And management is, you learn management at school, but you better learn, by experience. And as we mentioned, again, it's a combination of everything, but collaboration is key. Diversity, inclusion is really important. Empathy, ethics, all those things. And I strongly suggest to whoever is listening to this podcast, and thank you for listening, those that want to start with friends or colleagues or co-founders or whatever, is about knowing each other. So you have to spend time with people. You have to travel with them. You have to build something that is even little. You have to ask questions and open questions. It's really important. Honesty and being transparent about things. And I think that during struggles, in times of crisis, it's also something that you learn at the army, but not only, also during in a club or whatever. Participation is important. Participation in a very specific situation, and contribute as much as you can to something, to a mission, and being dedicated to this mission is really important. And I think that one of the flows, one of the things that I see, with corporate teams is about these cores. This is the kernel. I call it the kernel, of every team. If they want to achieve, sustainability or something that is called a resilient state, they need to be honest with each other. They need to build together. They need to spend time together. They need to speak the same language. They need to define things in the same way, which is something that doesn't help if you don't have it. So, and it sounds like, it's simple. It sounds like it's something that you acquire over time. It's something that, extreme ownership, understanding that this project is yours and you have to take it, everywhere you go. And sometimes, you have to take distance from the project to understand it better, to disconnect, to take, sometimes for yourself, and to retreat. But this is something that not everyone can understand if you want to succeed, sorry. And that's not something natural. You have to work on it. You have to train yourself for it. And I think it's a matter of responsibility also, because you're not alone, in the process. And this is something in most systems that I see, in most industries that I see, and we've seen that, during the past couple of years, particularly during the pandemic, with corporation deciding to switch off industries or to switch off, factories, and to go. The times of changes are very important to feed your mind and body, and understand by experience that you have to learn what change is and how it impacts yourself and others. It's a very good experience, I think, and this is something that I'm processing. I'm learning, over time, over again, and I can tell you that I have already a matrix of the different types of models from the companies struggling to achieve resilience and sustainability and build something sustainable. Yeah.
And difficult times make us stronger, and not just personally make us stronger, but make us stronger as a group. Some of the best friends, you make them through going through struggles, so difficult times together. And I just want to turn it around as well, because we talk a lot about the leaders in terms of the role in the organization, but those of you who are listening, who are employees, who are working for somebody, now is the time to show up as a leader as well. If your manager, your the founder of the company you work for,
any type of decision makers,
if think about them, they might not show it. They're under 2, 3, 4 times more stress than usual. It's your time now to shine and to go and say, you know what, let me have your back. I'm going to work a little more. I'm going to do this a little extra thing. What is it that I can support you with? Like, it's not about waiting for the leadership to come up and solve all the stuff. No, everybody's a leader. Some people
Right.
might be not in the
Yeah,
leadership
it's not exclusive.
cards,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
But doesn't matter what you do, you got to show up as a leader now, especially in times of a crisis. That's how you know get promoted. That's how you gain opportunities, and it's just the right thing to do. So if you're working for somebody, and difficult, more uncertain times are coming, now is your time to show your leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think not everybody can be a leader, um, but everybody can take ownership, can be responsible of something, part of the journey. If you don't want to manage, it's okay. I mean, it doesn't mean that if you don't manage, you're not a leader, and vice versa. Um, but I think that you have to take accountability. And in any type of projects, no matter what the initiative is, no matter what's the goal, I think the things that I saw during the pandemic and right now, it's very palpable. It's very apparent because it's still fresh in our minds, and the overall status is very still into a crisis, a health crisis and mental health crisis. So people express themselves still. I think people, because of the consumption and because of the, I call it, the economic states that, and I can tell that I saw before the pandemic a lot of points that we see differently right now. I think that people understood that they have to take initiative, and that's one of the good things. And figured out that there is a healthcare crisis, there is a mental crisis, there is an overall struggle to take into account that we couldn't take before, and that's part of the journey in terms of responsibility. Yeah.
For sure. And maybe let's finish up with the final
I
question.
I, I didn't I didn't think that we're gonna stay so long, on the challenges, but yeah.
But it's good. It's good to talk about that. But now that we're kind of wrapping up, let's kind of turn it around and with just a few sentences, if you can paint the picture on opportunities. And
Yeah, of
this
course, I wish.
just I'm going to
I would
start with
love
just
to.
with just one example, and maybe you can give a perspective to the audience. But like
Mm.
when I was in Israel, I met somebody, and she's in people management in a large company, and I was like, how's it going? The crisis is coming, everybody's kind of being careful with budgets, resources. How's it going for you? And she's like, I love it. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, finally I can get some really good people. She's in talent attraction, right? Like everybody now is super spoiled. Every employees, like they have it for a few years, like they can ask for anything, all the benefits, like everybody wants them. But now the crisis is coming, people starting to lay people off, and she's like, I can finally get some extremely good people,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
so much easier for
talents.
me.
Yeah,
So but what are other opportunities? Give me some, what opportunities, how do we look at
of course.
opportunities and
Yeah, I would
spot
love
them?
to, because actually that's the aim of any project. I mean, yeah, it's a good time. Also, we figure out that a lot of companies are firing, and a lot of putting. We speak about we spoke about laying off 20-30% of the workforce. But what is good is that of course it's not comfortable for anybody. It's not something that's feeling good as an employee to get fired. But on the other side, you have a bunch of opportunities occurring, particularly from the small businesses. And I think that that's where you learn. That's where you're becoming someone more important than in a big company. So I think that the ability to accept, to go from a big company to a smaller company, and now is the time. And don't take, not taking anything for granted, when you're part of a big company. But I think it's a good thing. It's a good step out to tell yourself, okay, maybe I'm gonna serve a better cause. Maybe I'm gonna help, the world in turn, better. I don't know, but I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing to become an entrepreneur or part of an entrepreneurship journey in a smaller company. So that's one thing. The second thing, I think that with the crises that are going to occur within the next few months, and probably because of the recession, as you mentioned, and the market that is unstable, I think that it's a good time for redistribution of the markets, because a big part of the asset baskets are all niched in the same place, and you need distribution to happen. And maybe investors, particularly early stage and seed and angels, understand that they need to take maybe more risks, but to have better returns and better ROI investing in smaller businesses, because they have struggles and because they have to do things in a right way. So this is why I'm so into taking the bottom level to start things in a new way, in a more innovative way. And that's why I love bootstrapping, and that's why I love doing things by myself. And if it works, I share. If it's not, I'm sharing also, whatever. But I think that, just to get the feedback, I think that you always learn by doing things, by bootstrapping. And I think that if you can, and as an employee, go outside your comfort zone, this is the opportunity right now. So you can maybe start things by yourself, inside a company or outside a company. And I think that those types of opportunities are occurring, not very few times in your lifetime, in your career. And yeah, I think that it provides accountability, and maybe the world is going to look like, in a better way in a few years from now. Yeah.
Boom. Take ownership, guys. Take freaking ownership. Amazing. Thank you so much, Yao. And of
Thanks
course,
to you,
before we
Ryan.
go, where could people
You're
find
welcome.
you and, the projects that you're on, get in touch with you, and
Yeah,
all the good
please.
things that you do? Tell
Please,
me.
I'm on LinkedIn most of the time. Social media channels are not my taste, my cup of tea, as we know. Maybe on Instagram, but yeah, LinkedIn is my LinkedIn, Twitter, where I'm spending most of my time on social channels. I'm trying to reduce as much as possible the noise, and trying to figure out how to detect the signals. But yeah, if you're into creating a project. Sustainability, resilience, creating value, please connect. I mean, I'm happy to help anytime when I have time. But yeah,
Or
I
if
think that that's the time.
or
That's
if
the
you want a
time.
guided tour around Tel Aviv, I gotta tell you, I had a great experience. So thank you so much once again, Yao. And
Thanks to you.
thanks everybody for listening to episode 120, ladies and
Wow,
gentlemen. This is what happens when you spot opportunities in uncertain
that's my
times.
number.
So thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to share it with a friend. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you really enjoy the podcast, give us a rating. It helps us to reach even more people and share the stories of exceptional leaders like Yao. And we're gonna get on with our days, because there's a bunch of stuff to do. I mean, we do podcasting, but this is more like a passion. We have our businesses, we gotta build stuff, we got projects to take care of. So let's go get stuff done. Not to use the other word.
Definitely.
Thanks so much, Yao, and see you guys once again
See you
next time
soon.
on Productivity Mastery. Let us know how you
Bye
like
bye.
it. Bye bye.